with the 2021 gauntlet, and we travel now from the enchanted forests of a Disney film all the way to the west side of New York for Steven Spielberg's long-awaited adaptation of West Side Story. So this one, just right off the bat, garnered a lot of discussion just by the mere fact of its existence, that one of our most revered filmmakers of the modern day was going to attempt to remake West Side Story. And I, like a lot of people, was a little iffy on that when I first heard it, but I gave it a little bit more thought. And I want to put this conversation to bed before we actually talk about the movie, and that is kind of my opinion of the film's existence. And the fact is, I don't mind it. Which I know some people are going to find kind of crazy, because I am on record multiple times as saying that, 9 times out of 10, I am against the idea of the remake or the reboot. My opinion usually being that if something was done right the first time, why do we have to redo it? And that's for film. I think film is a specific medium. And there are rules that govern it that don't necessarily govern other genres or other forms of artistic expression. You wouldn't go back and repaint the Mona Lisa saying, I can do it better than that hack Leonardo da Vinci, that kind of thing. But 2 reasons why Steven Spielberg taking a crack at this film doesn't bother me. The first being that this is not a typical film. This is an adaptation of a Broadway musical. And as I've told my theater classes multiple times, the reason theater is still important in this day and age, the reason why it is still a vital form of artistic expression, is because it gives us the chance to see how new generations and new perspectives interpret older material. To put it another way, the Broadway production of West Side Story has been remounted multiple times throughout the decades. So what? You were never supposed to redirect it or restage it after the original because that's a remake? It doesn't work that way. You need to see how new generations view things, and you need to see how new generations interpret things. Same reason why I don't mind that there are new versions of Murder on the Orient Express or Death on the Nile. New generation, new interpretation. That being said, so that's my number 1 reason. Number 2, and this one goes more to the heart of the matter we're about to discuss. The original West Side Story is many things. It is a classic, and it is a classic for very specific reasons. It is, quite frankly, genre redefining. It was when it hit Broadway originally, and the film version followed suit. The film version, the original, is almost a direct adaptation of the script. It's directed by the same man, Jerome Robbins, and it is basically just the Broadway show now being done for the screen. And there are a lot of great things in it. It revolutionized the way dance is used as a storytelling tool. It really hit on topics of race relations and gang violence and just racism in general, rape, murder, things that you wouldn't normally sing and dance about. It gave us some of the most iconic moments in film, not to mention the Academy Award-winning force of nature performance that was Rita Moreno as Anita. So there is just a lot about that movie that holds up and is just still to this day amazing. But let's be honest about this, folks. That Best Picture winner, it's a C+ to B- film at best. Sorry. You might take away my theater snob and film snob credentials for that, but it's the truth. There's just a lot about that movie that is incredibly dated. The acting being one of them. As I said, the original film version of this is just basically the stage version lifted and filmed. And as such, the acting of it is very theater acting. It's very big. They're acting for the back rafters. They're acting for the nosebleed seats. So a lot of the acting is very comical and melodramatic and over the top to a point of goofiness in a lot of cases. And that's even before we get into the very, very, very problematic issues of having the Hispanic actors and non-Hispanic actors bronze up, brown face it to play some of these roles. I mean, you had Natalie Wood playing Maria and didn't even have her sing. Someone dubbed her voice in. It's ridiculous, So my point being that where I stand on the remake and reboot and reimagining spectrum is a little closer to understanding on this one. I think that works like West Side Story should be reinterpreted, and the first one wasn't a classic, really to begin with. Now, Steven Spielberg said he wanted to remake the film version of Fiddler on the Roof, then I'd have a problem, because I believe that to be one of the greatest movies of all time, and probably the greatest stage-to-screen adaptation of all time. So that one, you said he's going to remake that, yeah, then we'd have a problem. This one, not so much. So now the question is, now that we've settled all of that, now that we have, laid out all that groundwork, let's judge this film. How did it come out? And the answer is, it's a C+ to B- effort. It is staggering that it is exactly on the same par with the original, in my opinion, for very different reasons. There are pluses and minuses to both. Some things are really, really, really well done, and some things are still very, very not. And there are some things that I think both film versions suffer from that are simply there in the script's bones and you can't really break it out from. So let's talk about the pluses. What does this film do better than its predecessor? And the answer to that is very, very simple. It does Steven Spielberg. Now, both of these films were directed by directorial geniuses. The original by Jerome Robbins, who directed and choreographed the original stage play, and this one, of course, by Steven Spielberg. Here is the difference. Jerome Robbins, a genius, but he was a stage director. And that's not a knock. I'm a stage director, so I'm not knocking him. I'm saying it is a very, very different medium from Broadway directing to movie directing. And I think he walked that line incredibly well. West Side Story, the original, still looks very good, and there are some amazing shots in there and some great visuals, but he relied more on the acting and the dancing and the music to carry all of that, and was much more of a here's the camera, set it up, and just record the action, basically. I'm not saying he didn't do a good job, I'm just saying that's the way it is. Spielberg, I don't think anyone needs me to tell you this, is a film director. Moreover, he is one of the greatest film directors of all time. Now, you can like or dislike his work, but the simple fact of the matter is nobody composes a shot like Steven Spielberg. His movies always look amazing, and this one looks amazing. The directing of this is... It's the way I think a musical should be directed. I would almost go so far as to say that this may be over-directed. There might be too much camera movement. But it is just, you compare the two from a directing standpoint, and there's no competition. This one visually is more beautiful. It's way more creative. It plays with color and perspective and angles. There are some masterful shots in this. And some of the musical numbers are directed just brilliantly. Probably the standouts for me are the two best songs in the show, America and Dear Officer Kromke. And both of which are just, you can tell Spielberg is having a ball with this. I've read very little about the making of this film, but I can tell you right now that this is obviously a passion project for him. One, because he's famous enough, rich enough, he doesn't do anything that's not a passion project anymore. Why would he? And you can tell that he's mastered every other genre of filmmaking, that now he wants to do a musical. He's never done one before. And you can tell this is something that he planned out. You can see the love and the attention in every shot. It is so meticulous. Again, it's almost over-directed. It almost draws attention to itself, which is something I think directing should not necessarily do. But, again, musicals are very difficult to direct, because if you don't create interesting visuals, then you lose the energy of it. You look at Joel Schumacher's Phantom of the Opera, and one of the problems it had, from my perspective, is that he did just kind of set the camera up and let the people sing. And the problem with that is, you know, in a live production, you have the extra energy of it being live and of the audience being there that you can't recreate just by sticking a camera in someone's face and saying sing. You need to take the audience on a visual journey. It needs to be a music video. And Spielberg did his homework and did it wonderfully. It is a masterful directing job by him, which no one should be surprised at. It's beautifully directed. I'm also going to say, one of the comments I made about the original was that, you know, the acting was over the top, like way too over the top. And this one, they settle it down. The acting is more film acting. It's smaller. There's a lot more subtlety in the roles. I also feel that some of the changes made to the script are beneficial in a lot of cases. For instance, it really fleshes out the character of Chino, who really did not get a lot of backstory. He was just the guy that Bernardo wanted Maria to go out with, and we never really know a lot about him. And I think we get a little bit more about him and about his, you know, what's driving him. I find him the true tragic character of this film. You know, really, when all is said and done, I feel sorrier for him than I do for anybody else. So most of the script changes are really well done. One of the things they do, just kind of talking about different interpretations, different generations, the character of Anybody, who is this girl who wants to join the Jets. In the original, she's just played up as this kind of tomboy, and this time they really lean into the transgender coding of the character, and I think that's a good thing. I think that is a good modern interpretation of it. So that's an example of kind of what I'm talking about with new directors interpreting classic works, and, you know, what that looks like. So there's a lot of good going on in here. The problem is, for everything good, there is something less good. I'm not even going to say necessarily bad. There's not a lot of bad choices in here. There's just less good. You know, there's just less good. And let's talk about some of the script changes. So I talked about Chino getting an expanded part, but the new take on the Jets, and I think this is a new kind of, again, one of those modern interpretations, and I don't know if it works necessarily in the film's favor, is that the Jets are just, they really play up the racism of them. They are essentially a gang of neo-Nazis, which I can understand is probably what those gangs were originally, so it's not a lie. But in trying to craft a story where we understand just the blind hatred of both, I don't think it comes off. You definitely understand why Bernardo and the Sharks are not... this isn't just a bunch of angry kids going at each other. There is real racism and ugly things going on here. You know, the way the film is supposed to be done and the way the show is supposed to be done is that's what you're supposed to be. These are petty criminals. These are, you know, just kids acting tough, throwing their chests out, beating them. You know, obviously there is a racial element to it, clearly. But it's supposed to build so that the attempted rape of Anita is this big shift for the Jets. It's really them becoming the monsters that they were always threatening to be. Well, the problem is, with the way the Jets are kind of interpreted here, they're already there. You know, it's not a huge leap from what they're already doing to what they attempt to do to her. So it doesn't have, so this powerful scene, one of the most powerful and shocking scenes of the film, it doesn't have the same impact because the Jets haven't gone through the same transformation. They were already monsters, if that makes sense. Also, God, I have to say this. And again, Steven Spielberg, one of the greatest directors of all time, you know, he knows his craft. So I have to ask him, I've got to ask, Steven, why the fuck are there no subtitles? The Puerto Rican characters have long bits where they're speaking Spanish, and that's fine. That's realistic. I've got no problem with that. But it would be nice to have subtitles so that we, the non-Spanish speaking audience, knew what they were saying. I guess we kind of had to go with context clues. You kind of had an idea of what was being said, but it's like, subtitles, please. I don't think I'm asking for much. There's also, I'm not sure what it is. Spielberg definitely downplays the dancing of West Side Story. The opening is nowhere near as dance-heavy as the original. Now, some might say that is a plus, but the problem is that the dancing is such an integral part of the DNA of West Side Story that you tone it down, you limit it to just some of the bigger dance numbers like America or the dance at the gym, and you're robbing it of one of its strongest storytelling elements. It doesn't have the same energy. It's flat without it. This is not to say there isn't great dancing. There is some amazing dancing in this. And again, for every yin there's a yang. He rearranges the order of some of the songs in this. Boy, Boy, Crazy Boy happens before they even rumble. It's Riff and Tony fighting over the gun. Tony's trying to get it away from him so he doesn't take it to the rumble, and they're singing Boy, Boy, Crazy Boy. I think that worked. That worked way better than where it was in the original. But then they place I Feel Pretty after the rumble. After we've had this big emotional scene where both Riff and Bernardo are murdered, and we cut to I Feel Pretty. It's a tonal shift. It's a shocking one. You know? So yeah. These are things that, you know, are directorial choices, and, you know, this is why you watch a film like this, to see the different choices, both the ones that work and the ones that don't. But sorry, I just have to tap this. Sorry, reminder, an alarm was going off. Sorry. Yeah. But again, both of these films just kind of even themselves out. There's pluses and there's minuses, and the biggest minus for West Side Story, for either version, and this one especially, I feel, is in the constant theme of yin and yang, of this show, I personally believe there are very few characters cooler than Bernardo and Anita. There are very few Broadway characters or film characters who have that level of cool. All right, Bernardo and Anita are two of the coolest characters ever. Conversely, Tony and Maria are two of the dullest fucking characters ever. They are two of the absolute dullest, blandest, most boring characters to ever inhabit a Broadway musical. And it's not helped by the fact that, again, you might take away my theater purist membership card for this. It's not aided by the fact that they have the most boring and meandering songs of the entire film. Tonight, Maria, their songs are boring. And they are boring. I was so bored. I have never done this. But they were so boring that I totally... I did a Facebook post in the middle of the movies. I don't do that. I'm against that. But I did it because I was so bored by them. And this is not a knock on the actors. It is not a knock on the actors who I feel were doing a very nice job. It's not a knock on them, I swear. It's not even a knock on the directing. It's a knock on the show, a critical member of it, the DNA of it. Tony and Maria are duller than fucking dishwater. And they try very hard to make them interesting. You can see that I think Spielberg felt this was an issue too. You can tell he also felt that they had the Romeo and Juliet thing of I saw you, I danced with you once, and I'm madly in love with you. He saw that as a problem. He tried to add more scenes where they spent more time together, tried to expand the timeline out so it wasn't just a couple days, it was more of a week or so. So there's a little bit more going on, but it doesn't change the fact they are boring. They are just boring, and no amount of genius can solve a problem that is that baked in to the fabric of the production like that. So I'm sorry, again, not a knock on the actors by any stretch of the imagination. But yeah, and like I say, it doesn't help that they get the dumbest songs. I think another issue this film has is that, again, because of when it was written, Spielberg trying to go for this ultra kind of realism in the acting and the staging of it doesn't lend itself to kind of the bouncier tempo of a lot of the songs and a lot of the music. The music has kind of almost a goofy cadence to it as when placed over some of these ultra serious scenes and staging. So it feels like there's a tonal disconnect during certain areas. Whereas one of the things I badmouthed earlier, the overacting of the original played into the fact that it was a musical. So when they burst into song or they had these kind of, again, a kind of more up-tempo music cues, it fit in with what was actually going on. So you can see the pull one thread and the whole thing unravels makeup of it. But have to say, okay, let's give some praise. I've bitched enough. Let's give it a little bit of praise here. The ones I was waiting for, when you think of West Side Story, to me, there are two songs that you have to get right. They're the two best songs in the show and two of the best songs that Broadway ever turned out. Number one is Dear Officer Kromke. And I really liked what he did with that one. I really enjoyed it. It started out a little lower tempo than it does in the original or even on Broadway. But it's staged really brilliantly. The second is America. And again, I'm saying this a lot, but I think America is one of the best songs in Broadway history. I really do. It's one of my favorite Broadway songs. And you got to get that one right. You have to get that musical number right. And Spielberg goes a very different way from the way it was staged in the original. The original, it's just the sharks and their girlfriends kind of having this debate up on the rooftop. Here, this is them having this debate kind of as they're going through their neighborhood, and the entire neighborhood is kind of joining in till it becomes like this big kind of communal dance number, this big party scene in the middle of the street. It's a different take on it. I don't know if it's a better take, but it was a really well done musical number. All the musical numbers are really well staged. Again, Spielberg, brilliant director. So all of the musical numbers are really, really well staged, but that one you had to get right. It's like To Be or Not to Be in Hamlet. You have to get that song right. And I feel he did. I enjoyed that one. Everything else is kind of a trade-off here and there. I think that was the high point of the picture, just like I feel it's the high point of the original. So different strokes, different tactics, different storytelling, still a good moment. So yeah, this one, I just don't know what to say about it anymore. I've said a lot, and so it's always funny after I've talked for 26 minutes and then gone, oh, I don't know what to say about it. I would like it if Spielberg directed another musical. Maybe direct a musical that hasn't yet been a film yet. Maybe do one that isn't as stylized as this one. There are a lot of musicals out there that could use a film adaptation and could use a brilliant director at the helm of one. So I would like to see Spielberg do another musical. And in some ways, he really elevated this one, and in some ways, it was just kind of there, you know? So, you want to say with a remake or a reimagining, whatever, that, you know, it overshines the original. It fixed all the original problems. Or you want to go the opposite route of, you know, it sucks and the original is better. You know, the Ghostbusters remake. Is a good example, or Tim Burton's Planet of the Apes is a good example. But with this one, again, I feel like the two films are just, they're even Steven. There's good and bad in both, and I can't really say that I prefer one over the other. I think I'll probably still show my students the original since it's closer to the Broadway show, but I don't see as there's anything necessarily wrong with. Oh yeah, we should say big ups. Yay, Rita Moreno coming back for her guest appearance, kind of taking over the Doc character. That was a nice touch. I respect that. But let's wrap this up. So final grade for Steven Spielberg's West Side Story. Oh man, that's a tough one. That's a very, very tough one. I'm going to be generous. And I'm going to go a B-. And it is really on the cusp. It's really on the cusp. So I'm being really nice and really generous here. I may regret that later. But yeah, B-. And again, that's about what I'd put the original at, so it's not like it's taking a downgrade. So I think it's a good thing for young directors to see, because it will show you the differences of interpretation. And it's a great masterclass in visual storytelling, because again, you don't get better than Spielberg in that. But I understand why it hasn't quite drawn the crowd that I'm sure he was hoping for. Just the way it is. But there you go. So there is Steven Spielberg's West Side Story. All right. The gauntlet is cruising along. We only have a few more of these to get through. I'm hoping I get through all of them. Thanks for joining me on this roller coaster. We'll be back with more. Thank you so much. And as always, drive safe, and I will see you at the movies.